A great addition to the shop, cut out using the Easel software on the X-Carve CNC machine, 3D printed all of the different knobs necessary for it, and quick and easy assembly of this computer stand on my CNC table. Now recently I just finished making a video showing exactly how to make this computer stand. Now I asked to have you guys leave a comment if you would like to see the details on how I designed these various components in Easel to make this whole thing work. Now there was a number of different components that needed to be made, and this is one of them, and this is another one. And people were saying yes, by all means, they wanted to know exactly how to be able to design something like this in the Easel software. Now there's some basic elements that you need to be able to understand. In the Easel software, there's really not a tape measure that you can be able to use to measure out the different sizes. But you can measure the actual size of the object, and you can actually position the object exactly where you want it in a coordinate system that's built into the Easel software. And that's what we're going to use to be able to design these different components. And once you understand how that system works, everything else will fall into place. Now actually, I've also had some people ask that if I'm selling the plans, that they would love to be able to purchase it. Well, I'm going to do one thing better than that. I'm going to offer these plans free to anyone who wishes to download them. I'm putting them on the Inventables project page, and they'll be free for anybody who wants to download this and build this computer stand. Now these various components are nothing more than individual rectangles and circles put together and then combined into one item. Same way with these pieces, these are actually a rectangle and a circle put together in a very precise manner to be able to make the component. And that is the whole key to being able to make something like this in the Easel software. This is the original design that I had made. It's not the exact one that I had cut out, because here you can see there had circles in the arm, and I had changed it and put the triangles in. It really doesn't matter. You can do this however you wish. What I want to start with is just a very simple basic component right here. We're going to start off with a brand new workpiece here, and I'm going to come up here to the Shapes menu, and I want to bring in this right here. Now this in the original drawing was 2 inches long by 4 inches. And I've got a couple of ways that I can do this. I can come right over here, because currently this is at 2 inches by 2 inches. I want to change this. I want to beef up this project a little bit, and I want to make it 2.5 inches wide, and I want to make this where it is going to be the 4 inches long. And there is the actual square. Now the next thing I want to do is bring in a circle. So we'll do the same thing. We'll open up the Shapes menu and bring in that circle. Now because I had set this at 2.5 inches, I want to set this circle at the same size. I'm going to come over here and lock this so that the diameter of this circle will remain the same. So now I have a circle that is 2.5 inches. Now here is the important part. I want to be able to take this now and position it exactly on top of this where it's not hanging over to one side or the other. The easiest way to do that is to actually use the grid system. To use this grid system, I'm going to highlight this to begin with, and right here on the 9-inch line, I want to be able to take and put this right on the 9-inch line. And you can see right now it's at 8.887. I'm going to switch that and put that at 9.0. Now, as far as this circle, I'm going to do the same exact thing, but in this case, it is going to be using the center. And if I use the center and then I put this on the y-axis at the 9.0, guess what happens? It will actually drop down on the y-axis, and it's exactly on that halfway point, but it's not on the left and right position. Now that I have this right at the 9 inches, I can also just take this and click on both of these components and move this over with the alignment tool this way, and that aligns it perfectly in line. Now that I have these completely joined together, let's do the next thing. Let's go ahead and combine them into one item. And by clicking this right there, now this is one component. Click on this now. I can move this anywhere that I want, and it will be as one item. Now the next step that I want to do with this is to also put this where it's cutting on the outside. So by selecting the cut menu, come down here to the cut path, and I can see the different options, and I want this to cut on the outside. I want to use this coordinate system again to my advantage. So I want to come back over here to the shape menu, and I want to position this now on the x-axis. I'm going to put this, let's say, at the 6-inch mark on the x-axis, and all that does is slide it over. It's still centered on this point at my 9 inches. We're going to come and we're going to select my circle. We're going to take this right up here, and we're going to lock this and put this at 0.315. There's my circle, and I want to position this now where? I want to position it directly on the 6 for my x-axis, and I want to position it exactly on the 9-inch mark on the y-axis. Now actually, that component is finished. I can zoom in, and you can see that hole is going to be directly into that centered point, exactly where it needs to be. It's all one continuous piece. If I want to set this up now to be able to cut all the way through, I'm going to highlight both of these, go over to the cut settings, and I'll be able to change this and bring it all the way down to cut full depth. Now you need to decide if you want to use the tabs or not. If you want to use the tabs, you can always move these tabs, like this one right here in the corner. I certainly would not want that in the corner, so we could move that over. You could bring this tab over by just getting it right there on that point, holding down the left mouse key, bringing it down. Same thing, hold down the mouse key, you can slide it up to where you want, and same thing with this. Now, as many of you know, I typically do not use the tabs. So in that case, I would come right over here to this section where it says Use Tabs, and I would unclick that, and the tabs would be gone. You see what the finished product is going to look like over here. Now, that's the basics on how to put together a very basic shape. With this knowledge now, I want to be able to make the arm for this. So we're coming back up here to the shape menu, and we'll select the square, and we can just drag this out. Now, how big does this need to be? Well, in the original design, this was actually 7 inches. So we're going to start with that. We'll make this 7 inches, and we're going to increase this to the 2.5 inches. Now, at this point, it's time to put the circles on the end of this. So let's grab a shapes menu, bring the circle in. We'll change the circle by locking this, making this 2.5 inches. So we have that component, and we need to be able to duplicate it. Now, one thing, I could just bring in another one, or I can hit Control C and Control V, and that will give me my second one. So there's the basic components that I need to be able to make my arm. Let's take and move this over. Now let's put this on this side right here. So we're closest to the 3 on the x-axis. Okay, now that I have this on the x-axis on the 3, let's take my circle and do the same thing. Let's center this using the center of my point, and I'm going to put this on the x-axis at the 3 inches. And there it is. So now I'm going to just highlight both of these, and I'm going to come up to the alignment tool, and that takes care of it. Now let's do the exact same thing on the other end. So that is the component that I need. At this point, let's go ahead and combine it. Edit menu, combine, there we go. We're going to cut it out on the outside, and we'll select that, and there is our component. Next, we want to put in the 2 holes on each end, and those holes were the 0.315. So it's back to the shapes menu, select a circle, and then we'll change the size. Remember, this was 0.315. Now this is for the 5/16 inch bolt. Your bolt size may vary, so keep that in mind too if you need to adjust any of these sizes. But for my purposes, 0.315 is perfect, and I can slide this into position. Again, using this coordinate system, I can position this very precisely exactly where it needs to be. I'll repeat the same exact process for the hole at the other end of this computer arm. This completes the computer arm, so this component is done. I can highlight everything and slide it right down to the bottom. The next part is up to you. If you want to put circles or triangles in the center of this arm, well, you can certainly do that using the exact same process that we have shown so far in this video. You'll need at least 3 computer arms to be able to make this computer stand. At this point, I'm going to highlight it and use the Control-C and Control-V to be able to duplicate this. And of course, I'll need to do this one more time, so I hit Control-V once more. From here, I'll just highlight it and I'll slide it over and align it to where I want to be able to place it on my project board. Of course, I'll do the same thing with this third piece, highlight it, and then move it over into position as well. I want to give you some bonus information. I decided to make this arm a little bit larger, and by highlighting this, I can slide this to the right. It does not affect anything else to the left. It only moves it to the right in that direction. This portion is exactly the same. The only thing that needs to move is the hole. I need to position it back over in the same position as it was originally, and the center circle would need to be placed again in the center. But using the exact same process as we did before, using the coordinate system, this becomes a very simple process because we're only moving this on the x-axis. The y-axis is already fixed and did not change. I hope that you're beginning to see that you can very effectively use this coordinate system to make very accurate measurements and placement of the various items to create these components. To name this workpiece, I can select it in the top right hand corner. You'll have this little drop down menu, select rename. That brings up this window, and you can type in, for an example, computer arm, and that will be the new name. Hit rename, and there you go. Now you see computer arm in the bottom left hand corner of the workpiece. Now I want to open up a brand new workpiece, and I want to start working on the base. So it's back to the shapes menu, and let's pull out the square, and we'll put this up into the center so we can work with it. And the basic shape of this is 2.5 inches on the width and 5 inches on the height. I also want to show you how to eliminate the sharp edges on these corners by using the corner radius. I can just highlight one. I can put in 0.25 of an inch and hit the enter, and that rounds off the edges on all 4 of the corners. Now I want to add the 2 slots. These are the registration marks for the plywood to actually fit into to give the correct distance between the 2 pieces of the plywood. Now my plywood is 0.736 of an inch. I want to be able to increase that by about 400 just to give a little bit of tolerance. So I will enter in 0.776. Now of course you'll need to verify the thickness of your plywood and enter in the correct amount. I'm also going to enter in the depth of the cut by selecting the cut menu, and I'm going to set this either with the slide bar or I can key in the amount. And I'm going to put in 0.15 of an inch for the depth. And that will give me a nice slot for the plywood to actually fit into. Now with this base, let's go ahead and change this where it's cutting on the outside. So there's that shape. And we know that we're going to need 2 of these. They're going to need to be one right there. We'll hit Control-C and Control-V, and we'll have another one. And we know it's going to be right here. Now, This bracket will need to be able to sit inside of there, and we need to have that space for that plywood right through here. So where is it actually going to be? Well, the simplest way again is to use the grid. I want to be able to set this grid up where I'm working with the center points to begin with and work outward. So this is on the centered on the y-axis. We'll just make this at 7 inches. So that is going to be the center point. I'm not worried about the x-axis. I want this also cutting all the way through. So that will cut all the way down. I'm going to have no tabs in there. And now over here on the preview window, you can see where it's cutting all the way through. Now for these, if I just put these in here, that's not going to fit. That's going to need to be extended a little bit to be able to fit into that space. But look at what happens when I do that. You can see how it's not cutting all the way through. Well, there's a simple solution. All I need to do is come up here to the edit menu and select send to the back. And when I send it to the back, you're going to see where that is now going to cut all the way through. Perfect, exactly what you want. Now that now takes care of my x-axis. That's exactly where I need to have it, but it does not take into account the y-axis. The other thing is, this gives me the exact size that I need. I know this was 2.707. Let's make this one 2.707, and that would be fine. We'll slide that over, and we can put that in at exactly the same point. Where's the center point? The center point of this is my 5 inches on the x-axis. You see the same problem that we have over here. All we need to do is highlight it, send it to the back. Now we need to work on the y-axis. How thick was that plywood with the tolerance built in? Well, it was 0.776. What is half of that? Half of that would be 0.388. Now using the 0.388, that is going to be real important because we know the center point is our 7 inches. So if you have 7 inches, let's highlight this right there. Let's make this highlighted on the bottom. And this now needs to be at 7.338. That moves it up exactly half of the thickness of the plywood. Let's get my bottom slot moved. And right now I'm at 7.338. And we're going to subtract that at 0.776. And that gives me 6.562. So what we need to do, come down to this one, select the top. It doesn't matter which one that you select. And we need to be able to put this now right at 6.562. And that will give you the exact spacing that you need with 4/1000ths or 4/100ths of a space in between. So that completes the base, and that will give you exactly what you need. Now I like to be able to put in just 2 little pilot holes just as a reference as to where you can screw in this mount. This is strictly optional. You don't need to do that. But what I'm going to do is put them in. So I'm going to take this circle. Let's make this a little bit bigger than 1/8 of an inch so that we know that the drill bit is going to do it. We'll make this at 0.131 instead of 1/8 of an inch at 0.125. So let's lock this. We'll put this at 0.131. Again, do the math. Move it over on the x-axis on the 5 and do the subtraction to put it exactly where it needs to be. And of course, you'll need to do the same thing for the pilot hole at the bottom. Now this actually completes the base, and it's exactly what I need to have, but there's still one problem. The pilot holes are not showing up on the preview. Now this causes people a lot of different problems, but basically that's saying that it is not going to carve out when you run this job, and it's not. what we need to do is actually change the size of these holes and make them just a little bit larger so that they will show up over on the preview menu. With that small change, you now see that pilot hole showing up on the preview menu. I know this has been a huge problem for a lot of people that they don't see their design showing up in the preview menu, and this by far is the most common reason. I have the basic component here put together, but we need to put these notches in there. And to do that, let's grab another rectangle, bring this up. I want to keep that tolerance at the 400ths, so this on the y-axis, as far as my height, needs to be 0.776. And the length of this really doesn't matter at this point on the x-axis. So I'm going to need 3 of these. So I'm going to hit Control C and Control V. Another one will go right in here. Control V again, and another one will go into this area. Now again, there are things we need to look at. This top portion right here is on the 8. This bottom portion, a line, is on the 3. So what's halfway in between that is my 5.5. That is going to be the center point of this. So if I take the center point, and let's just assume for a second that I change this to a 0 cut depth. So it makes, I'm just going to keep it light gray at the moment so we can still see it. That's going to be sliding in to this point. This one will do the same thing. We'll just make it light gray. This one will slide into there. And of course, this one will make it light gray at the moment. Will be slid down into this point. Now with that thought in mind, that's the basics. All we need to do now is look at these specific coordinates and be able to position it exactly where we want it. Now the first thing is, we know that 5.5 is going to be the halfway mark. So let's use the center of this one. We'll put it at the 5.5. And that's centered on the y-axis where it needs to be. But that's not in reference to the depth. I want to have this where it's a 1/2 inch deep. This is on the 6, so let's move this over. And that needs to be at the 5.5. Whoops, wrong one. So let's just unmove it. We'll move this at 5.5. So we have the first one positioned where it needs to be. I'm going to move this now to the center point. X-axis is at 6.5. So this one needs to be at 6.5. And this one needs to be at 6.5. And that takes care of the x-axis. I know this one's centered correctly. What do I need to do now? I need the space between here and the space between here to be the 0.776. So it's done exactly the same way as we did before. I want to start with this one. I'm going to highlight this right here. I know that this line on the y-axis is 5.888. So if this is at 5.888, I need the bottom of this one to be, with this gap in between, it's going to be 6.664. So we'll put that right here, and we'll put this at 6.664. And that positions it exactly where we need to be. It doesn't get much easier than this. Now let's do the same thing with this one again. We're going to look at the bottom of this, and the bottom of this number is going to be 5.112. And we need to be able to subtract the 0.776. And that means that the top of this is going to be at 4.336. So let's highlight it. Let's make it on the top. That's the reference point. And on the y-axis, 4.336. I need to take all 3 of these now and make them to a 0 cut depth. So there's nothing there at all. Highlight everything and combine it. And by combining that, I now have one component that will move around with those notches exactly the way that I want it. I still need my hole in the center, and I need this now to be able to cut on the outside. To get this hole directly in the center, we're going to do exactly the same thing we did before. I'm going to put this rectangle directly onto my coordinates on this corner right there. And that's going to be perfect. If I take a look down here at the bottom, we're going to use the bottom right hand corner, and that's going to be 6.0 and 3 on the y-axis. So now then, I know that this is going to be the 8, and I know this is 3.5. Let's go ahead and set this up now where it cuts on the outside. So we highlight this component on the cut menu, come down to cut path, click on the cut outside, and while we're here, let's make the depth of cut to its full depth, cutting all the way through the material. As far as the tabs, we'll uncheck this. Tabs are gone, and now we can concentrate on the hole in the center. With our hole now sized correctly, all we need to do is position it where it needs to be. I've highlighted the center point of the position, and now I can just type in on the X coordinates the 3.5, and on the Y coordinates I can punch in the 8.0, and that gets it centered. The last item we need to make is the component that will slide into these notches. And we already have the basic right here. The only thing I need to be able to do is put the slot into this right here. And we're going to do it exactly the same way. And I can rotate this 90 degrees. I haven't shown this before. We're going to rotate this 90 degrees. And we need to put this in the center. So we're going to do the same thing as what we did before. We're going to move this over to a center point, and we can just put this on the x-axis at 5. See how we can just slide that over, but on the x-axis, make it real simple at 5. And we'll put this now down at the bottom, and we'll put this on the 4. There we go. Now we know exactly where that is. We can bring this down to here, and what are we going to do? We're going to center it to begin with. We'll put this at the 5. So that takes care of the center, and now we need to move this up. We need to move up to this top corner is actually on the, on the y-axis. We need to have this a 1/2 inch in, so that's going to be at 4.5. So I hope you can see it. This is starting to get pretty easy to be able to do. And at this point, that's where the notch is going to be. We're going to change this. We're going to reduce this all the way down to the 0 so you can't see it. I'm going to make this as far as cut on the pocket. Now when I change this, you don't see that notch, so we need to take this item and let's move it to the back. There we go. There's our notch. Now we can take this whole thing and combine it. And we have our notch there. The component is now combined together and our notch is in place. The only thing that we lost was the hole that was in the center, and that's okay. We'll put that back in later. Right now we need this component to be able to put the dog bones in. And to do that, I need to come over to this app. You'll get the drop-down menu, scroll down, find the dog bone generator, and highlight it. That creates the dog bones that we need. The bit size is the 1/8 inch, so that's all correct. We import that into our design screen and, of course, eliminate the tabs. Now this is very important. I want to zoom in real close. This little blue line shows the actual tool path. This is now cutting, after we brought this in from the app, is cutting on the tool path rather than cutting on the outside. You must change this. You put this now back on the outside and this will cut properly. This is very important when you use the app. Don't forget this step. If you do, The piece will be cut out too big and it will not work, and you'll have to recut it. Now we can eliminate the original design. We no longer need it because we have the component with the dog bones. The only thing we need to do now is add the hole right here in this center. Using the exact same step, I added the hole back into this component, and this completes this component. All that's left now is being able to highlight this and put it on the correct workpiece so that we can get it prepared to cut out. Okay, after just a moment, I changed the side of the project board to where it's 11 inches by 19, and that fits in there quite nicely. I'm going to switch back over to this one because all of this needs to be where it'll cut all the way through as well. No tabs, and that takes care of it. So this project now is finished. We'll click this and we'll rename this to the computer stand parts. There we go. That's renamed. So we have the component arm, or computer arm down here, the computer stand parts right there. This one we don't need anymore. So I'll take this and delete it. That will permanently delete it. This original one we no longer need as well. So this first one we can delete as well. And that takes care of it. So I no longer need that. So this is all the computer stand parts. The only thing that's left now is to be able to make the top itself. And I had done this on the table saw, but I'm going to show you exactly how to cut this out on the CNC machine as well. For the next piece, for the computer stand top itself, you can have actually a lot of fun with this. Now mine was 12 by 16. I'm going to make this a larger piece of wood. So we're going to start out with 25 inches, and we're going to make this about 18 inches. We'll make it a little bit big. And I had this at a 0.5 inch thick material. So there you go. So I want to get a rectangle here, and I want to get two pieces in here. The size of this will be 12 by 16, and I'll do the same thing, hit Control C and Control V, and that will be my second piece. That'll fit right in here. Now, like I said, you can do this on a table saw, a circular saw, even a jigsaw. You don't have to do this on the CNC machines, but this will work just fine. And of course, we're going to need to change this and cut it on the outside. So we'll change this outside right there. We'll cut this one on the outside. We'll make sure that these are cut all the way through. You want to use tabs, you can use tabs or not. So I'll just reduce the tabs. And on the other one, we'll do the same thing. We'll take the tabs out. The last step, I like to rename this, and we'll just select a computer top and we'll key that in. Hit rename, and that will complete this workpiece. And if you want to give yourself a little bit of extra room, probably wouldn't be a bad idea, but this is going to fit on there just fine and be able to cut out. We need one more workpiece now for the mouse pad itself and the component that will allow the mouse pad to slide in and out and create the stop. This mouse pad and the guide rail are created exactly the same way. This end piece will attach to my mouse pad, and that will create the stop. The guide rail at the top has a little notch in it that will likewise have it where it will stop as you slide the mouse pad out to the full extension. Once you connect the tab on the left side, just combine it, and now you have one component, and that is your mouse pad. The guide rail at the top will need to duplicate and have one at the bottom, but you can see how this mechanism is going to work. That will create the necessary stop and allow it to slide in and out. I used the copy feature, copied the guide rail, bring it back down to the bottom, and then another new feature that I haven't shown you is back to the edit menu, and I want to be able to flip this piece on the vertical. So click to edit, come down to flip vertical, you can see it right there, and that will reverse it and make it where it's exactly the way it needs to be. Now, is this important from the standpoint of cutting this out? No, it's not. But to be able to test this mechanism to make sure that it's all going to fit and work correctly, then this is an important part. The last question you may ask is, do you need dog bones for this? No, you really don't. If you want to put dog bones in one of the components, you certainly can do so, but it's not necessary. The last step of this process is to make sure this mechanism is going to work. To do that, I overlaid this on top of the computer stand, and then I zoom in real close and look at the actual tool path, see where this is going to cut and how much of a clearance do you have between the guide rail and the mouse pad. And you can see there's a little bit of gap there, and that is what I'm looking for. This is an important step because if you need to adjust the guide rails, now is the time to be able to adjust them so that they'll fit properly on top of the computer top itself. In addition, do not forget you need a little bit of a spacer underneath the guide rail to allow room for this mouse pad to slip in and out. In the video that I did where I showed how to make this, I used thin strips of Formica as my spacer. You need some type of a spacer. It doesn't have to be a Formica strip. All that's left is to take my mouse pad components, copy, and bring it over into my new workpiece for my mouse pad. Arrange them so that they'll fit into the project size for the material that I'm using to cut this out. And then, of course, I'll rename this to the mouse pad workpiece. This concludes this video. This was a very detailed video showing exactly how the basic principles of Easel works. And with this knowledge, you'll be able to design pretty much anything that you want to. And don't forget, this computer stand is going to be on the Inventables project page should you want to download this and be able to carve this out. Strictly up to you. If you want to take the knowledge that you've learned from this video and be able to design your own or design whatever you want to, you have the foundation and the basic information now to be able to do so. So if you like this video, by all means, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to hit that little subscribe button down below. I would really appreciate it. And I know this is a long video today, so I can't wait to see you back in the shop again. So for now, bye-bye.